Oh, welcome to Stillspeakpod. So yesterday morning, I did a video, and in that beginning part of the video, I said, that I hope that I'm not here a year from now saying, it's day 391 and still no Brian laundry. Well, I jinxed it, right? Because about an hour after that video, we found out that items belonging to Brian were found in the Carlton Reserve. And not long after that, it was circulating that partial remains were found in the Carlton Reserve. And then after that, the FBI did a press conference confirming that partial remains had been located along with Brian's backpack and a notebook belonging to Brian. And we then were waiting, and this morning it was said that it was skeletal remains, and that caused a lot of chaos because people thought, it's not him because it's bones, but they weren't taking into account the fact the body would be underwater, and weather, and gators, and animals, and more. So then we got word from a source that it was actually a skull that had been found. Well, tonight, or earlier tonight, we got word directly from the FBI with a statement saying that the remains that were found at the Carlton Reserve on October 20th are indeed Brian Laundrie. And they confirmed this via dental records, which now also confirms the source who said it was a skull. And I put that up in a video not long ago. I think it was actually a few hours ago now. It doesn't feel like it, but I did that. So, Brian Laundrie, 23 years old, is deceased. Emotions are high right now. They really are. There's a lot of attachment to the story, and everybody has an attachment in a different way and for a different reason. I'm attached to the story. I wouldn't say emotionally attached, but definitely attached. I've been reporting on it since September 14th, which was basically the day that everybody started reporting on the case, because that's when everybody, heard about it, basically. And so, I know all the dates off the top of my head and times and who's who and what's what and what was said 3 weeks ago, because I repeated it on this channel I don't know how many times, and I could probably repeat the information in my freaking sleep at this point. And so, yeah, I have an attachment for sure. And, other people have an emotional attachment. They have an emotional attachment to Gabby and in the form of sadness. Others, have an emotional reaction attachment to the Laundrie parents in the form of anger and, and so on and so forth. And I think we're all trying to, process, or trying to think back over what the hell just happened in the last 6 weeks. What on earth? Because there have been so many ups and downs and twists and turns, and it's been wild. It's been really, really wild. And so we're all thinking back to September 18th or September, 12th, and what was said and who said this and what said that. And it's really hard to, keep everything sorted. And plus we have so many questions, right? I was going to do a whole video on all the questions that are not answered, and it would just be an endless list, and we're probably never going to get the answers to all of those. Maybe some, but definitely not all. And we all had different theories and opinions and views, and, we all probably had a vision of what the ending was going to be, what the outcome would be. And for some of us, it might be that what we envisioned or what we thought or the outcome or conclusion isn't what happened, and that's, it's hard sometimes to process that. And for some people, it's really freaking hard because they refuse to just admit that they were wrong, right? And just say, you know what? I really thought this, but it's not this, so it's okay. I don't have to be right. And so they hold really steadfast at maintaining a narrative that they've built up in their mind because it's easier than admitting that they were wrong. I personally have no problem admitting that. I was right about a couple of things, but I was also wrong about some. Biggest one being that I actually really did think that Brian was still alive in the reserve or relatively close to his home. And I left the possibility that he could be dead because that's a very big possibility, but I was leaning more towards him being found alive. I would have rather him being found alive, but, it is what it is. And it's kind of strange because I actually right now on my laptop have his Instagram up, and I'm looking at a picture of him on my screen because I'm going to be putting it in this video. And even just looking at just this picture of him, I'm still processing that he's dead. And not only dead, he was most likely eaten, every part of his skin off his body at some point by some animal or a gator. And it's sorta, but not exactly, but sorta the same way after we found out that Gabby was deceased, even though a lot of us assumed she was. Hearing it was like you're looking at this girl and you're just thinking like, how is she dead? It's a similar thing because, we think back to that video that Gabby posted on the 19th of August, her very first video for her vlog that she was trying to start up. And they're so alive, right? They seem so happy and they're on this amazing trip and they're kissing and laughing and they're so alive. And now they're both dead. 22 and 23 years old, gone forever from this earth. And for what? It's just unbelievable. And like I said last night, currently there are 6 parents out there, 6 that we know of, and many other people in the world who are grieving for other reasons, but 6 related to this story, parents-wise, who are grieving the loss of their young children, okay? And obviously it's going to be in different ways because everybody grieves differently, but specifically different between the 2 families because one was murdered and the other one most likely was because he murdered somebody and took his life or possibly was eaten by an alligator or both. And so obviously the situations are different, but the grief doesn't, change. It's going to look a little different for each family. But it's still grief, and I don't give a damn. I really don't. I have sympathy for his parents. I do. I'm sorry, and I said that last night. I'm a human being, and I sympathize with what they're possibly going through right now. And so through all this processing that we're trying to do, everything's really chaotic and frantic and just crazy all over the place. In the media, on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, everywhere. Just chaos. And it reminds me of back on September 18th, the first day that they searched for Brian in the Carlton Reserve, which was the day after we found out that he had taken off. I was out all day long. I talked about this last night, I believe. And when I came home that night and I was trying to catch up, it was just mind-blowing. The things I was reading, the amount of posts that were up, the theories were off the chain, and it just felt chaotic. And I said last night, I came to you guys and I said the simplest and easiest answer is usually the right one. I've learned that in cases. You're getting too complex. Relax, breathe. You don't have to be so frantic. And after I have processed this information today and yesterday, it definitely tells me that this was always a simple, easy answer, right? It makes the most sense that this guy took off, went and killed himself outside in a place that, he enjoyed, and that was that, right? That doesn't help that we just watched, FBI, who's supposed to be the greatest law enforcement, agency in the country, search a reserve for weeks on end. And all along, he was right there, literally right there, not far from where he parked the Mustang. So it's a little frustrating. And no, that's a lie. It's completely frustrating. It's puzzling. It makes us feel very confused, and all that comes with that. And I want to say something here, just as a little, warning, I guess you can say. I'm seeing specifically YouTubers, but some media outlets are trying not to lose their money flow. They're trying not to lose subscribers, and they're trying not to lose viewers. And they're trying to keep you tuned in. And they'll do that by any means possible. And I'm seeing a lot of thumbnails and titles to videos of almost he staged his own death, or it's not over yet, the parents, or, clickbaity type of videos where they're trying not to lose you and make in that you don't think that this is now over and you stop listening. And this is happening in the media too. So I would just say to you, be cautious. I'm not saying that this case is over. Obviously, we know the ending of Brian, and we know the ending of Gabby. We don't know the before, the after, or what the hell happened in between all that. But, we know the outcome. And anybody who's trying to sell you an idea or plant a thought in your head might have a motive behind doing that. Just, giving you a heads up. And some of them, will try to keep you tuned in, and they don't even necessarily believe what they're saying. They're just saying it to not lose you. Basically, they're feeding you. They're feeding the groups of people who, were into all the conspiracy type of theories and trying to keep you tuned in. So that's that. It is what it is, right? And one specific YouTuber who's actually rather popular did something today that just, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to say about it other than it was just so gross. So somebody took pictures of Cassie outside of her home today when she was walking around somewhere. It looks like her neighborhood. And to me, she looks absolutely exhausted. And not only did somebody take a picture of this woman the day after her brother's remains were found, and just a mere few hours before it was confirmed to be him, but they had the audacity to post these pictures on YouTube on their channel and actually pose the question, does this look like Cassie's grieving, or something to the effect of, does this look like a grieving sister? What? Are you shitting me? Grief looks different for everybody. A 1-second snapshot of somebody walking and you're trying to judge whether or not they look like they're grieving? That's disgusting and appalling. And it was said in a way, because I know this specific person, or about them, or what they usually cover, like, to imply that either the remains really weren't Brian's, so that you'll tune in, because maybe it's not him, or two, to imply that she knew all along that he was dead, and so therefore she doesn't look upset, because she already knew, or three, like to imply like she doesn't give a crap about her brother. It's just to keep you tuned in. And that was just one example of many that I've seen. So, yeah. And I was actually really pleasantly surprised that a lot of people reacted to this post as I did. They were just completely appalled that they even posted and said this. And after the remains were confirmed to be Brian, of course, reporters reached out to the Petito Schmidt family and wanted to see if there was going to be a statement. And they said they're still grieving their beautiful daughter, and they will make a statement at the appropriate time and, when they're emotionally ready. So let's go over some things here. There's a picture of Brian with one of his nephews in the Carlton Reserve back on July 6th of 2020. You've probably seen it on his Instagram. And it's got great irony now, doesn't it? That was 1 year, 3 months, and 14 days ago. 15 days ago. Sorry, it's the 21st. So 1 year, 3 months, and 15 days ago, he was in that very same reserve having a family day with his little nephew. And he ends up being found dead there 1 year and 3 months later. Now let's go off the idea that he left the home on the 13th, he went to the reserve, and let's say he killed himself, which we have no idea. We actually may never know the cause and manner of death. Maybe. It depends on how much of him was found. And, if, let's say, it was a gunshot wound to the head and they have the skull, they possibly will be able to see a bullet hole, entrance or exit wound area. They'll also be able to tell, if at some point he was eaten by an alligator, they'll be able to tell if that was prior to his death and that's what caused his death, or was it after his death and he was just eaten once he was dead. But you have to take into account that he was underwater for a period of time. There's also the Florida weather. He's in a swampy area, so you got the bugs and the gators and the animals and more. So, there may be a possibility here that we might not ever really get much information about what transpired with Brian. I'm hoping that we can at least find out if it was suicide. I'm definitely leaning that way. And, there's this notebook which might contain something. He might not have given a full confession, but he might have left a note saying something to the effect of like, I can't live, in prison for the rest of my life. I love you. Goodbye. Something like that. But we have to wait and see. I don't know if that's ever going to be released. He might have written a letter just to his parents that we'll never see, that he only wanted them to see. I don't know. Now that, this is eventually going to get closed and no charges, all the charges against him, which at this point was only one, for the credit card, that's going to be dropped. And eventually it's not going to be an active investigation. And once it's not an active investigation, they typically will share that information. We'll see. But let's just go with he left the home on the 13th, he went there, and he killed himself. So let's just go with that, right? If He has been out there since the 13th. That is 37 days that he was out in the elements. 37 days, 5 weeks almost. If he died on the 13th of September, that means from the time of the Moab, Utah stop with their domestic violence incident, both of them were dead 1 month and 1 day later after that stop. That's it. 1 month and 1 day. If he died on the 13th of September and she died on the 27th of August, which it definitely looks like that was the case, but we'll see, that means that they died 17 days apart from one another. And if Gabby died on the 27th of August, that means that after only 56 days on this trip, one of them ended up dead. And if he died on the 13th, that means that it was 73 days from when they took off on their trip on July 2nd that both were dead. It would be 12 days after he got back that he died. It would be 2 days after the cops showed up that he died. And it would be 1 day after they took her van that he ended up dying or killing himself, whatever you want to say. By the time law enforcement started looking for him, if he died on the 13th, that means he had already been dead for 5 days. This is so freaking tragic. I don't know how anybody can look at this and not think that this is just insanely tragic. The entire story is just mind-blowing and tragic. I mean, seriously. 56 days after taking off for this trip, one of them ends up dead. Within 73 days, both of them are dead, if he died on the 13th. 73 days. 70 freaking 3 days. Unbelievable. Now, I want to talk about some of the similarities between Gabby's death and Brian's. Now, let me start with saying this. Clearly, and I've made it very clear on this channel many times, what happened to Gabby is clearly not the same as what happened to Brian. Period. I get that. Gabby was murdered. She was taken. It's totally different. But there are a lot of similarities between the two, okay? So, Gabby goes dark, right? The mom gets weird text. And she's texting back, but she's not getting anything else after that. She got the weird text on the 27th, the weird text on the 30th, and after that, she's still texting and she's getting nothing. She says that she got worried within the first week, but that, everyone around her was kind of like, no, it's fine. She probably doesn't have service. She's in the mountains. She's on this trip, just wait. It's probably nothing, right? And so she waited. And on the 10th is when she reached out to his parents, concerned about both of them. She tried filing the missing report on the 10th. She ended up not being able to, so she was able to find somebody willing to file it on the 11th. And at that point, right, we know that, Northport was contacted by the county that she filed in, and they went past the home, and they find out that the van was back in Florida, and that the family had lawyered up. Now, since that first weird text, which was on the 27th of August, that is 15 days before filing a missing persons report. But really more so 14 days because she wanted to file it on the 10th but had all those hiccups, okay? But Nicole says that she was actually really concerned about the 4th or 5th day. She didn't really specify if it was day 4 or 5 after the weird text, or was it 4 to 5 days after her last call with her on the 25th. Listen, I understand why her parents waited to file. Trust me, I get it. You don't want to think the worst. Sometimes your mind doesn't go there. Sometimes it does. You might be having some type of, gut feeling, but you kind of blow it off. Like, you know what? She's an adult. She's out in, the middle of nowhere. Maybe her phone broke. Maybe whatever, right? You start trying to blow those bad feelings off. So I'm not bashing them, waiting so long by any means. But there was a delay, right? We can't deny there was a delay. But, there was reasons for that. Now we go to Brian, right? He doesn't go missing. He drives back to Florida, and in that time he goes camping, and then on the 13th, he allegedly leaves the home in the Mustang to go to the Carlton Reserve. And then, of course, we have an issue. But let me finish first. So it's claimed that the parents go there the next day after he didn't come home, and they went looking around for him, and they didn't find him. This is all according to the lawyer. They didn't find him. They see a note that was left on the Mustang, basically a warning that the Mustang was going to be towed, which makes sense, especially if it had been sitting there overnight. So he leaves Monday. They go there Tuesday to look for him, and then by Wednesday, they have the Mustang back in the driveway. Thursday, nothing. Into Friday evening when police went to the laundry home, and we, the public, found out that Brian had not been home in days, okay? So let's go with what we thought all along, which we thought that there was this delay in letting the police know that Brian had been missing for days, okay? And now, that's similar to, Gabby's family having a delay in reporting her missing. Now, of course, we can't look at it as exactly the same because a lot of people thought that the parents were involved and that they delayed it to give him head start or to get away or to kill himself, etc., etc., etc. Regardless, though, in both instances, there was a delay, right? We now know Brian is dead, so apparently, it seems, he never went on the run. I mean, I guess he ran to the reserve, not technically on foot, but he ran there to possibly end his life or be eaten by an alligator, who knows? And I said last night that it's possible that maybe they too waited in this version of events that we've been talking about for weeks, because at first they chalked it up to maybe, we're overreacting. Maybe he's just camping out in the reserve. He wants to get away. He doesn't want to be around with all this chaos that's unfolding. And maybe they just assumed that, he'd come home. And then after a certain amount of days, they were like, all right, he's really not coming home and we have a major problem here. And then we find out that he's been gone. And you have to remember, at this point, when this all was happening, Gabby still had not been found deceased. So nobody knew Gabby was dead officially. Now, I said in that version, and I said that we have an issue. And I said that, we've been repeating this for weeks now, that they delayed. We've been saying it over and over and over again. Brian left on the 13th, and They didn't report him to the 17th. Actually, originally we were saying it was the 14th because that's what we were told, and then it got changed to the 13th. But regardless, the public was under this impression that the parents did not report Brian missing for days. Okay? Well, then here comes Stevie B, Steven Bertolino, last night on CNN to throw a massive twist in the story. And can't even make this stuff up anymore. But I'm going to tell you what he said, and then I want to come back to it because I want to talk about Northport, but I don't want to lose my flow on how there are similarities between Gabby and Brian's demise. So Stephen claimed last night on CNN that, according to him, so don't shoot the messenger in case you didn't see it, they did report Brian as not coming home on the 13th. That's what he said. He said that Brian went to the reserve and that the parents told him that he didn't come home. And at that point, he said that he contacted his contact at Northport and made them aware that Brian went to the reserve and he didn't come home. He claims that days went by and that on the 17th, when we all thought that the Laundries had called the police to their home to let them know that Brian was missing, according to Bertolino, what actually happened was that law enforcement called them and said that they got a tip that Brian was in Tampa, and so they wanted to check to see if he was at the home, and a time was set up for them to go past the home. And when they went there, the parents were asked if they wanted to file Brian missing, and of course we know they said yes. And I'm just going to say this right here, okay? If this is true, holy every bad word that exists, okay? Are you freaking shitting me? Oh my God. That's all I gotta say about that. If this is true, and this is what happened, that these parents told police on the 13th through their lawyer to Northport their son didn't come home, and that Northport led the public to believe that they delayed telling that he was gone and made everybody think the worst of them, if that is true, I would be speechless. Absolutely speechless. Okay, so we'll come back to Northport in a minute because I need to do a little rant. Let's get back to the similarities. So we have these delays. There was, if we're going with that version, right? Because now Stephen kind of twisted that. So who knows? But if we're going with the version of events that we thought existed, there was a delay in both people. And they started searching for both of them on the same day, just in different parts of the country. They actually were setting up Gabby's search on the 18th. I think they did do a little bit of searching on that day. And then, because the day prior, they had gotten the video footage from the vloggers. And then on the 19th, the next day, they found her, right? So they didn't search for Gabby for very long. Thanks to that vlogger's video, she was found rather quickly once they actually physically started to search. Whereas we know with Brian, it took a hell of a lot longer to find him, despite the fact that, again, according to Steven Bertolino, the parents told law enforcement exactly where Brian would normally go in the Carlton Reserve, which was relatively close to the entrance. So make sense of that? I don't know. Both, who seem to love the outdoors, right, died outside in, type of environment that was in some areas beautiful. I know you're thinking like swamp, like that's not beautiful, but there are certain areas of the Carlton Reserve that was beautiful, or is beautiful. Specifically, this picture of him with his nephew in the Carlton Reserve, it's really pretty. So they both, ended up dying outside, which was, kind of a part of this whole cross-country trip was the great outside. So there's a little bit of irony there. Gabby was found a short distance away from where the van had been seen. Her stepfather mentioned that it was actually close to the entrance of the Spray Creek area and wasn't, that far. It was kind of over a creek and off to that side. And Brian, he was found not that far off from the entrance to the reserve. So there's a similarity there. On September 19th, Gabby was found deceased, right? And on October 20th, so just one day shy, or actually I should say one day over from a month since Gabby, Brian was found. So it was almost to the day 1 month. Gabby had her autopsy on September 21st, and we found out that it is Gabby, and the manner of death was homicide. Today, October 21st, so 1 month since, it was confirmed to be Gabby, we get confirmation that it's Brian Laundrie, and he's deceased. Both were outside for extensive amount of time after death. Gabby, not as long as Brian, but long nonetheless, and awful. Gabby was roughly between 20 to 23 days that she was outside. If she died somewhere between the 27th and the 30th. But again, I definitely think it's the 27th, but we'll see. As far as Brian, well, I said it earlier, so he was out there 37 days. And both were obviously in very rough shape once they were found after that extensive period of time of, decomposing outside in the elements. Both were found relatively near some form of water. Gabby was identified by the family on the first day she was found based off a sweatshirt that she often wore and liked and had bought at a local shop. Brian's bones were found with a backpack that he often used. With Gabby, she could have been anywhere, and without that vlogger's video, Lord knows how long it would have ever taken to find her. It was a needle in a haystack, let's be real. She could have been anywhere. With Brian, people thought he was everywhere, right? He was in Canada, he was in Mexico, he was in Ohio, I saw him here, I saw him there, right? So we thought he could be anywhere, just like Gabby. Well, it turns out, no. So there's a similarity there as well. And as a little side, I guess, I don't want to say laugh, but sorta, all this time when everybody was playing Where's Brian, and, every bald guy with a beard was being accused of being Brian Laundrie, all along, his body, his skull, was sitting in a swamp. So everybody was looking for a bald head and beard, and yet this guy didn't even have skin left on him. If Brian, shot himself in the head, which remains to be seen, but let's just say he did, the similarity there would be that they both died, in the head area, right? Because she was strangled, which is the neck. And most likely, if he killed himself, it was a gunshot wound to the head or the mouth. Then you have all the obvious similarities, right? Of course, they both had FBI involved, both had law enforcement involved, both had search teams and helicopters and et cetera, which is, of course, common sense similarities. A semi-similarity is that the day after the FBI received the vlogger's footage of the van, the following day is when Gabby was found. With Brian, the reserve got reopened after weeks and weeks of searching. And what happened? The next day, the parents go there and they find Brian. And do not attack me when I say the next one, but I'm going to say it, but I'm going to state the obvious afterwards. In both stories of Brian and Gabby, or it is one story, but it felt like two different stories that were connected, right? So with Gabby, her family didn't all go looking for her. Jim Schmidt, her stepfather, is the one who flew out to Wyoming because they wanted to keep one person in Long Island, one in Florida, and he felt like he needed to be out there to be a part of the searches, right? And that makes total sense. This is where I'm going to state the obvious thing so you don't attack me, is that clearly they weren't all going to go out there searching for Gabby, okay? Because they have other kids and whatnot, and it just didn't make sense for them all to go. So that's understandable why they all didn't go. But technically, all of her parents did not go search. Jim was basically there on behalf of all of them. And at one point, they didn't know where to search, right? Until they started getting tips and the FBI was involved, etc., which led them out to Wyoming. And then, of course, the vlogger's video, and then her being found not long after that. So where were they going to search, right? Where are you even going to start? With Brian, though, the parents didn't go searching for him, although the lawyer alleges that they did look for him, on that after that night that he didn't come home, they did look for him in the Carlton Reserve. They didn't find him. And that's when they took the Mustang home. And then we know much, much later, the FBI asked Brian's father, Chris, to help point out certain places that Brian liked to visit inside the reserve, right? And he did. And then, it was closed to the public. And like I've said in all my other videos, they don't typically want, family to help with the search. Especially in a situation like this where it's a very dangerous and swampy area, and they already had one dead person and one who was quote unquote missing, and so of course they're not going to want to derail the investigation by having somebody else hurt, missing, or dead. And since they are the public, it makes sense that they actually couldn't search for him. But, some people can keep going on about how they didn't look for him, but I've said this enough, so I'm not going to keep saying it. But they didn't look for Brian as much as the public would have liked them to go looking for Brian. So that's a semi-similarity. Another similarity was before Gabby was found, the parents didn't know. Was he dead? She dead, or was she alive? Nobody really knew. A lot of people really had hope she was alive. Joe Petito specifically seemed very hopeful. I think mom knew. You can see her in interviews. She had mom's intuition. She knew. And depending on what you believe with the Laundries, they possibly had no clue whether or not their son was dead for the last 37 days. Right? So there was a period of time in both instances where these parents really didn't have a clue one way or another. Possibly, right? Because it depends on if you think the parents are involved. There's probably more, but those are the ones that I thought about earlier and I quickly jotted down. I've added a few off the top of my head as we're sitting here discussing it. And hey, we might find more similarities as time goes on. I don't know. Now, that all being said, am I trying to make them equal? Hell no, right? I said in the beginning when I was going through every single theory, I explored every possible scenario. And I just kept coming back to, there's no way this girl's alive. There's just no way. Because I just cannot see why he would come back here without her. It didn't make sense. And so I was pretty set on the fact that she was deceased, but I still was open-minded and explored the theories, but I just couldn't get over him coming back. So no, I'm not making them equal to one another. One was killed. Her life was squeezed out of her, for Pete's sake. It's one of the most horrific ways to die. So no, absolutely not am I making them equal. But it is rather fascinating to the story, right? How there are these similarities and what has transpired here. So I just wanted to kind of discuss that a little bit. And now the biggest similarity of all is, parents on both sides grieving the loss of their child. No one wins here. Nobody in the families, nobody in the public. This isn't a game. This is real life. And that's it. This isn't like, they're dead today, they're going to be alive tomorrow. No, they're dead. They're gone forever. Gone. That's it. They're both gone forever. And I just keep coming back to, and for what? Why are both of these young people dead? Why? Not why as in what happened, more so why or what could have been so awful to have caused this chain of events. What type of argument transpired prior to Gabby's death that was so, horrific that it resulted in, her life being taken? Was it something ridiculous, like arguing over, where he put his shoes in the van? Or was he mad about her vlog and they were arguing? Is that what caused the both of you to now be dead? Are you kidding me? What was so severe that caused this? Or was it something really minor and petty that most relationships deal with that just for some reason escalated to this point? I don't know. Or was it not petty? Was this a domestic violence situation from the get-go? And, it led to all of this. We don't know. I just keep thinking about it. I'm like, if this argument was over something so minute, so small, and the end result is 2 people dead, what was it all for? What in the hell is going on? And I can't help but keep thinking about this Moab, Utah incident. I've done a 4-part series on the body cam footage. I went through it extensively. And one of my first thoughts yesterday was actually back to those officers. I was like, what is going through these officers' minds right now? Honestly and truly, what is going through their minds? First hearing that, Gabby was missing, then hearing that Gabby was dead, then hearing that Brian took off, and now hearing that Brian is dead. What the hell are those officers thinking right now? I'd love to know. I can't even fathom what they're mentally going through. I'm sure they're mentally suffering right now because they are 2 people, or actually it was 3, 1, 2, 3, I'm sorry, it was actually 4 total people, officers, who was in the presence of this couple. And within a month of this stop, they're both dead. Like, could you imagine being them right now? And how horrible that must feel? I don't even want to think about it. But I do want to know what they're thinking. I just don't want to be them thinking what they're thinking. And I'm really hoping to hear from them eventually, and I think we will. They're doing an independent, investigation into what happened. I think that once that's done, and once this case ends up closed, they might actually give an interview and share their feelings, and I'm looking forward to that. I just think that they're suffering, that's all. When all these parents say goodbye to their children, have fun, I'm so jealous, take lots of pictures, send us, pictures and videos, and we'll FaceTime, and you can show us the sights, be safe, watch your surroundings. If they only had a crystal ball. If they only had a crystal ball. They had no freaking idea that just 56 days later, all of their lives were going to be completely, utterly destroyed. And it just shows you that life can change in an instant. And you just never know what the hell is going to happen. And you just got to live day to day and hope for the best, honestly. What happens next? Well, it's a really good question. I follow a lot of cases. Currently, right now on this channel, my main 2 cases that I'm following is this one and Murdaugh. I like to know everything about a case so I can fully analyze it, and that takes a lot of time and takes a lot of thought process, and so I tend to only be able to really focus heavily on 1 or 2 cases and then do some minor ones in between there. And no, I'm not going to keep continually, reporting on this case. There's still a lot that's going to be coming out soon, so definitely will be more videos on the Petito case. But, I have done other videos about other stories and cases and missing people and whatnot, so I'm definitely want to do more of those now that this is coming towards an end. But anyways, what I was going to say was that, I do follow many, 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 many cases, just not all of them do I follow extremely close at one time, especially if they're all going on at the same time. You can only really focus on 1 or 2. And in all the cases that I have followed, it's not very often that you actually do see the suspect in that case or a person of interest end up also being dead during the active investigation. I know you often hear about like murder-suicides. Yeah, that happens. But once you hear about the story, they're both already dead by that point. And, it's just not common. You hear about it, don't get me wrong. It's just not as common as other cases where the person's arrested or confess or plea deal or go to trial. The biggest reason why the FBI and law enforcement doesn't give us information is because it's an active investigation, right? And right now it's still currently an active investigation. And they might not even have all the information that they wanted or needed to fully know what happened with Gabby. And now they have to deal with Brian, and they have to process that scene and process the evidence they find. And then they have to basically take these 2 individuals' stories and connect them together to try to paint some form of picture and sort of get some answers, especially for the families, and kind of figure out what the hell happened here. And then they're going to close the case. Now, is that going to happen tomorrow? No. It's probably going to be some time. It's not like, oh, he's dead, okay, case closed, we're done. That's not what's going to happen at all. Now, when a case is no longer active, and let's say there's an arrest, then it goes to the legal process, right? And then the lawyers and whatnot argue in court about what should be released and what shouldn't be released. Then you get some information from arrest affidavits. Sometimes the autopsy is released relatively early on in the legal process. You get that. Then you get the preliminary hearing, where it's basically a mini trial where both sides argue to see if there's enough evidence to take it to a trial. And then you find out most of the information from a trial. And not all of it, because you can't cover all of it. You're going to only hear the things that are important. And then, if there's a plea deal, like in the case of Chris Watts, what happened was they had their discoveries of information, and that was the prosecutor's information, not his defense lawyer's information. And once he took his plea deal, not long after that, they released the discovery because they no longer needed it. With his plea deal, he has no parole or anything like that, so they no longer had to hold on to that information. It was a done deal. So they released all of it, all the body cam footage, all of the documents and interviews, all of it. It was like one big drop and then a second drop. Since, she's deceased, he was the only person of interest. They were saying the only person of interest in her homicide. Yesterday, the FBI said, person of interest in her murder. So that kind of, signaled to us that there is no other person and he was their suspect, which I think we all kind of figured. And with them both being dead, clearly there's not going to be a trial. Now, if the parents did do something wrong that was illegal in some way and there'll be charges against them, then that would put a hiccup in any information being released, because they might need that information for any type of, hearing or trial against them. I don't foresee that happening, but that could happen, okay? So I think it's going to be similar to, and now, like I said, this is a guess because you don't see this happen very often. And based upon plea deals and how discoveries get released, I'm going to go with, this is a guess, that once it is closed and it's confirmed that the parents weren't involved, he's dead, she's dead, we've processed all the evidence, everything's done, said, boom. At that point, we'll probably get a bulk of information because they really have no reason to hold on to that if this is never going to go to a trial. Some information they might just share with the family. Other things they might share with us as well. It's really a wait and see situation. I do expect that we're going to get more information out of Stephen Bertolino because now he's doing television interviews. He did another one this evening while I have been recording this. I haven't watched it yet. So it seems he's ready to now, do TV interviews. And I have a feeling Cassie will speak again, most likely, to Good Morning America. She seems to like them. So I'm expecting that. And I am expecting, most likely, at some point, I can see the parents doing an interview. I think it's going to end up being one interview with one very big platform. That's just my gut feeling on it. And we may get a matter of death or cause of death or both, depending on what they found of him. So far, we know for sure it was a skull since they were able to ID him from, dental records. So things are going to come out. It's just going to be slow. And then there might be a point when it does get closed that we might get a lot. We just have to see. I have so many questions, even though, a lot of this makes sense And to me, and it seems very simple, and it's the easiest answer to all of this, I still have a ton of questions just like you. So hell yeah, I want more information, right? Or it's going to bother me forever. I'm always going to think of this case and be like, why this, why that, blah, 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 blah. It's going to drive me nuts because I'm somebody who likes answers. If I get something in my head, I'm going to search for that answer, and doesn't matter how long. I drive myself crazy sometimes because I'm like, all right, you've been looking for freaking 4 days. Stop. But I can't. I just get fixated and I'm like, no, I need to find it. I need to find it. So for me, not having these types of answers is just going to eventually drive me freaking insane. Some people can just be like, meh, this is done. He's dead. She's dead. As far as I'm concerned, the case is closed. I don't care what happened. That's it. I'm done. Right? So we're not all the same. And, a lot of people have been done with this case for a while now. It was really bumping up until Gabby was found. And then at that point, people kind of checked out because they were like, oh, this is one of those stories, boyfriend kills girlfriend and, that's it. And so they kind of checked out already. And now you're going to have another bulk of people who are going to check out because they're just going to be like, what the hell is the point in following this anymore? He's dead, right? And then you're going to have the people who linger around, who's really been attached to the case, who are going to be holding on for every little piece of information. And then you're going to have the bulk of people who were so sure and so steadfast on some outlandish theory involving Brian Laundrie on the run with the help and assistance of his parents, or hiding in a garden bed, who will not give that up and continue to carry on with crazy theories like the one that they're talking about right now, which is basically that these parents planted not only the notebook and the backpack, but Brian's partial remains, which we now know was a skull. Apparently they just, walk around with their dead son's skull in their backpacks. And the other theory, which is just, what? I don't understand people. Do they hear themselves? I just saw on one of Brian's pictures on Instagram, there was a comment that said, we know you faked your death. The comment was 2 hours ago, which was after the FBI confirmed that, he, is deceased, and that they knew this from dental records. So I just said to this person, I suppose you think that he chopped his head off? I mean, you realize they found his skull, right? I mean, how do you fake your own death with your skull? So you're going to have these people. You're going to have these people because they were so set on something, and it's just easier to do that because it's exciting than to just be like, you know what, I was freaking wrong. This sucks. I can't believe this is how it ended. What a freaking tragedy. Boom. Move on. But it is what it is. And no matter how many times I say it, they're not going to change because it happens in every freaking case. I said freaking a lot tonight. Sorry about that. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I just did another video of an updated timeline. Just so while we are processing, you can refer back to that if you need it to kind of make sense of all this in your brain. And if you subscribe to my channel because you're following this case, but you also want to follow other cases, don't worry. I know my last few videos are about this case, but a lot's going on, right? So of course there's going to be a lot of videos about this case. But as you see, I have 105 videos in less than 2 months, and I've done many videos on other cases as well. And the two right now, like I said, is Murdaugh and this case. But there are other ones I've done. I did one a few days ago on Keeslyn Roberts. I'm working on another one out of Hawaii that you might have heard about. I'm hoping that I get to that in the next day. I was going to put it out earlier in the week, but then all this happened, so it kind of postponed that. So for those of you that kind of follow the Petito case and you're like, all right, I'm kind of done with this. If you're one of those people, don't worry. I'm going to have other videos on other stories, I promise, soon. While also still keeping up with what's happening here, as well as in the Murdaugh story. So that's enough of my voice for this evening. So until next time, I'll see you soon.